Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, July 7th, 2020. Time for yet another show, and I'm still gathering the news as we speak, trying to catch up with where we are on the coronavirus and education front, and I'm a little bit behind yesterday. Yesterday was a very busy day. Today will be a very busy day, so I'll probably be behind tomorrow as well. But then it'll be Greg Dworkin's problem to round up the news, and we can lean on him to do it. Joan McCarter ought to be here later on, although, things can always swing the other direction if it's a busy news day. She's got to cover the front page news desk in case of any emergency or just plain craziness on part of the president. And I see there is some connected to this. I was just getting through the news, or the Twitter part of the news anyway, where I was finding out that I guess in Florida, and I'm not certain, I just skimmed it, but I was taking a look at that. Well, maybe I can pick it up on the phone here. But the article about Florida declaring through one official or another that its schools absolutely campuses absolutely were, the public schools, there we are, going to be open for in-person learning, all of them, in August. Here we go. It was breaking news 14 hours ago, anyway, just reaching my desk. Let me open this up here. The tweet is from ABC News affiliate down in Tallahassee, ABC 27. I love when they have those kind of crazy numbers. Touch them. Not like here in my upbringing, in my youth, the old East Coast centric numbering system where everything was the flagship station essentially, and all the numbers were low. But anyway, ABC 27, all of Florida's public K-12 schools are now required to reopen their campuses in August. Let me take a look at the actual article attached to it. Again, it's happening on the phone here, but I can share them with you in the roundup. Florida Education Commissioner, I guess, is the official responsible here. Florida Education Commissioner requires all Florida school campus districts to reopen campuses in August. And I guess this is regardless of what the numbers may be in terms of coronavirus and the COVID-19 disease, because that's not what's driving their policy. What's driving their policy is what they want to see happen. And what they want to see happen, apparently, is whatever the lunatic in the White House happens to, squeeze out of his brain and into the Twitter machine because he's watching Fox News, and someone on Fox News is complaining, what there ought to be a law that says all the schools have to be open. And so he just tweets that. Let's see. There's so many things going on here. By the way, I guess we'll make sure that we read you Bill's morning tweet to start us off. Just give us another topic of discussion. There are so many being suggested here. Daily Co's Radio, of course, that's this. It's live. That's you hearing it now as I speak it to you. And in a double ironic twist, Bill says, after hearing that the libertarian, and I never did finally figure out, is she Ayn Rand or Ann? Is it just Ann with a A-Y-N? Does anybody know? Does anybody care? Does anybody worry about whether or not it's pronounced correctly? She's dead, so, I suppose you want to get it right. Anyway, just, I don't know, sound like you know what you're talking about. Anyway, the Ayn Rand Institute got a gazillion-dollar bailout. We actually have a much narrower band to estimate the size of their bailout, but it was somewhere between $350,000 and $1 million. You know how you have that wide band to disclose, and you don't have to tell exactly how much they got. And pretty amazing, Kagro X, me, David Waldman, ends up being the one who snaps and goes galt. It's a crazy world out there, folks. And yes, we are bailing out anti-government, libertarian think tanks, I guess you could call them, who are ideologically opposed to government, not only government bailouts, but any government assistance of any kind. But, free money, I'll take it. And apparently this is a to no one's surprise, of course, a growing trend that people who are supposedly ideologically opposed to bailouts are happy to take free money. Jared Kushner's company probably grabbing up the free money. Any number of places that really ought to have no business taking this money whatsoever, including some very well-heeled businesses are kind of amazingly grabbing up all of this stuff and stuffing their pockets with it. No surprise there. Let me turn back here, though, to the article now that it's come up from Florida. The Florida Education Commissioner requires all Florida school districts to reopen campuses in August. Reported this way, beneath that headline, Florida Education Commissioner Richard Corcoran. And I'm guessing that we're getting that pronunciation correct, and you can look him up and find out where you can find Richard Corcoran if you want to hold him accountable for the results of this thing. But no one ever will do that, and it will be considered uncivil to do so, I'm sure. But Richard Corcoran has issued an executive order, and you know you have to do it because it says executive order right on it, whether it's valid or not, whether he signed it or not, whether it's legal or not. It's a signed piece of paper, and there's nothing you can do. An executive order requiring all of Florida's public K-12 schools to reopen in August. As part of the executive order issued Monday, school districts and charter school governing boards must open brick-and-mortar schools at least 5 days per week for all students in August. I mean, that's called regular school. I don't know really why they put it that way, at least 5 days per week. Maybe you can do it on weekends. 3 weekdays and 2 weekend days will count. I don't know if anybody has any plans to do anything like that, but and I don't know that would make any difference. Like, does the virus take weekends off? If it does, let me know. I think it can fix a lot of things that way. Upon reopening in August, all school boards and charter school governing boards must open brick-and-mortar schools at least 5 days a week for all students, subject to advice and orders of the Florida Department of Health, local departments of health, Executive Order 20-149, and subsequent executive orders. The order reads, school districts must also provide the full array of services that are required by law so that families who wish to educate their children in a brick-and-mortar school have the opportunity to do so. I don't know whether this hints at the availability, either now or announced later, of a distance learning option, and you can opt out of it, but all the schools have to open in order to provide the, I guess we're going with that term, the brick and mortar option to anyone who wants it. And of course, what's driving it, of course, is the realization, probably starting with the guy watching television in the White House, that, okay, yes, it's true that we're just not really going to be able to get everybody back to work unless there's child care. Whether they won't really care about whether there's education or not, just there has to be child care. And so I guess he's just declaring, why don't we use federal resources to force people to put their children, or I guess force people to open the child care centers known as public schools, and use that so that they don't have that excuse available to them to not show up to work, even though they'll also have, they'll still have available to them, I guess, I don't know whether they'll accept the excuse, but the explanation that I'm too sick to work, or I'm going to make all the other workers too sick to work. And I don't know how they're going to deal with that one, but I guess what they're saying is, we will divert your attention from that bridge when we come to it. I think that's pretty much what they're saying here. Let's go through this, and then I'll go through one other article that I think explains what's going on here. And I'm explaining it as much to myself as anybody else here, just catching up. So the Florida article says, all right, that includes in-person instruction. They don't accept the idea of just opening the schools to just hold on to kids. But, I mean, generally speaking, that might be what they end up doing if the teachers don't show up or are too sick to teach. Now, opening these schools includes in-person instruction, specialized instruction, and services for students with individualized education programs, or IEPs, English language learners, as well as live synchronous or asynchronous instruction. If the district chooses to utilize live synchronous or asynchronous instruction. It must have the same curriculum as in-person instruction and offer students the ability to interact with teachers and peers. Districts are also required to monitor the progress of all students and report that data back to the Education Department regularly. The order provides some extra support for remote learning students. That's interesting. Students who are receiving instruction through innovative teaching methods must be provided additional support and the opportunity to transition to another teaching method if they fail to make adequate progress, the order reads. If the district chooses to offer innovative teaching methods, that's in quotes there, they will be required to submit a reopening plan to the Florida Department of Education that satisfies the requirements laid out in the order. Districts that want to open, quote, as usual, will not be required to submit a plan. So there you go. If you're going to do that thing which essentially might be accomplished safely if you have a plan to do so, right? I don't know if we can really imagine such a plan, but if you had a plan to do so, no need to tell us what the plan is, just so long as you're willing to say the kind of opening you're having is an as usual kind of opening. I think what's emerging from this, and I guess we can just finish this because there's just a little bit left here, and then we'll go back and cover these thoughts here. Parents will still have the ability to choose if the district makes the options available, that is, in-person or distance learning, I guess. However, the order makes it so school campuses will open regardless of what choices parents make. The order is temporary and applies only to the upcoming fall semester. You can always renew it, of course. You can look at the full executive order from the Department of Education below. You can also view a slideshow breaking down the order in a link provided here. I don't know whether we're going to take that option or not. But what seems to be going on here is, well, they heard from the guy watching TV in the White House because he heard from TV that the resumption of all of our economic activity depends on schools being open so that parents aren't stuck at home supervising kids with nowhere to go. So they simply ordered the schools to open. Well, that's easy. We can just order it. And I mean, I think that's what's happening here. We could read the order to be sure, and maybe we can go that route. But I think all that's happening here is they said, oh, well, people on TV are saying that the schools need to be open, so open them. Well, how are you going to open them? They said they need to be open, but we need to open them safely. I didn't hear that part. Who cares? If I order them to be open, they're open. If they're not safe, meh. And I guess maybe this also is partly the reason for Mitch McConnell's drive. This maybe we can talk to Joan about later on. She's always up to date on what Moscow Mitch McConnell is up to with his ridiculous tricks. But I think it may be that maybe this is what's behind his insistence on passing liability waivers in all of this. If what we'll do is, there's no real answer. No one has come up with an answer for how to open the schools in a way that, well, certainly no one can guarantee safety. Maybe that's just the wrong standard. But to give you some reasonable expectation of everyone's safety, including the teachers and including the parents at home when the kids come back from day after day, hour after hour of mixing in close proximity, and hope they don't pick up the coronavirus from the kids, and hope against hope that it remains the case that younger people don't exhibit the same symptoms that kill you very quickly. I mean, we don't even know what happens to kids with this coronavirus. We still don't know that, but going off of, how they simplify things on, like, say, Fox News television. In the original crisis, kids weren't exhibiting the same symptoms, and they weren't showing up in the morgues in the numbers that the elderly were. We don't know why exactly. We don't really care to find out why exactly. All we know is the reporting said that kids don't get it, so therefore kids can go to school. It doesn't matter that there are also some adults there, and that those adults go home to their own homes at the end of the day. That's too complicated. I heard kids don't get it, so that's it. Well, that's not really true. And as long as, I guess, you're willing to indulge the debate on the basis of science and medicine, you're going to end up in the same place. And it's very frustrating. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this in a way that's going to satisfy everyone's need for safety. And the answer is, well, if there's an executive order that says you're opening whether it's safe or not, that appears to, I'm sure in their mind, very, very strongly cut the Gordian knot and say, there, boom, schools are open. Now everybody get back to work. It only lasts so long as it takes for everybody to get sick this way and then not show up for work or have work close because, either no one's there or no one will shop there or no one's available to buy anything because they lost their job because they used up all their sick days. It doesn't anticipate or care about the problems that it's going to create. As far as they're concerned, job is done. They say schools need to be open. I'm the education commissioner. Boom, I opened the schools. Well, what about all the sick? Shut up. I opened the schools. What about all the sick people, though? You can't just tell me to shut up. Fine. I'll indulge your stupid question. What about all the sick people? Talk to the health commissioner. I'm the education commissioner. Kiss my ass. The schools are open. If there's sick people, talk to the sick people guy. What do I look like? A doctor? And that, I guess, that's the approach. Now, I also saw in getting everything booted up and ready to go for the show today, because I am scrambling to get that done, I can't look any deeper into it at the moment than, well, I could, but I didn't. How about that? Look any deeper into it than The Hill presenting itself via Twitter with a photo, an eye-catching photo and everything about what is probably driving all of this. Now, we can find the primary sources either by searching Google for it or, I guess, reading the Hill article and seeing what they point to in this. But I guess it all comes down to this. This headline, not super splashy. Schools face tough road to fall opening by Reed Wilson over at The Hill. And I know we all hate The Hill, but it's a good tool for use in things like this, finding your way quickly through the news jungle. Just weeks before fall classes are scheduled to begin, and it is that. We forget about this. It's July, but I guess it's weeks until the sun burns out too, but a lot of them. But okay, a few weeks before fall classes are scheduled to begin, school districts across the country are racing to implement new measures meant to protect teachers, students, and parents from the coronavirus, as opposed to down in Florida where they just say, why are we bothering with this? Let's just open. Well, then you're not protecting anybody from it. I know. Talk to the protection guy. I'm the school guy. Right hand, meet left hand. No, I don't want to. I'm not interested in meeting anybody. But as they prepare for socially distanced lunch hours, constant hand washing, and possibly even staggered attendance to minimize the number of students in the building at one time, education officials are watching with concern as schools in other nations become epicenters of new flare-ups. So there's, lessons to be learned from other countries. Not all countries are out of school for June, July, and August. Some of them have the opposite seasons. Some of them don't care anything about our stupid traditions rooted in, I think, there's rumored to be rooted in agricultural traditions that kids needed to be home for the harvest, but I always thought of the fall as more of the harvest time. So maybe they were home for the planting, and I don't know. Anyway, the agricultural schedule means nothing to me at this point, and I don't know whether it has any real relevance in the United States anymore or not, but there are other countries that do things differently in the school year and may even have readjusted their school year because they lost so much time to COVID-19 related shutdowns earlier on. And they say, well, there's no reason why we shouldn't be open if we think the virus is under control during the summer to make up for that lost time. Whereas we said, well, school's over. And so that's that. Kids aren't going back during the summer, even though they also aren't going to summer camp or participating in any of the other youth programs because there's still coronavirus around. Could very well send them back to school. But, of course, up to this point, we've been, I guess, relatively good about acknowledging Oh, maybe we should talk to doctors about that and listen to what they have to say. Now we're getting past that. So anyway, what do we learn from other schools? Nearly 100 schools in Israel shut down in early June after students or teachers tested positive in the weeks after the nation reopened its education facilities. A week after France reopened about a third of its schools, dozens of students tested positive and some institutions shut down once again. And in South Korea, and remember, they're the gold standard, and it can never change no matter what happens to us or what we're looking at. In South Korea, hundreds of schools were open for just a few days before the Ministry of Education ordered them closed. Okay, of some interest then. Internationally, we have some experience. They thought they beat the virus. We told ourselves that we did, even though we didn't really believe it. Can we open the schools? The experience of other countries says no, but the experience of other countries also told us that with strict lockdown procedures for an extended period of time, you actually could mitigate the spread of the virus, and we still refused to do that. So why would we take their cues on schools? I don't know. Anyway, also, by the way, good answer in terms of, well, what about that claim that, hey, kids don't get it, so it should be fine? And the answer is, that's not true. Kids do get it, and you won't be fine. All right, duly noted. Now, for our own education policy, we are opening in August. Why? It's not safe. Because kids don't get it, and that's the way it is. But we have the experience of Israel. Israel, who cares? I don't know what's happening in the White House. They're saying, who cares what a bunch of Jews found out? All right, fine. I thought you were pro-Israel, but I guess not. How about France? France, old Europe. How about South Korea? Gold standard. South Korea, we love North Korea. All right. I guess that's information enough. Now, here's an extra bit to this story that I did see yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to talk about because we focused on other things, but I wasn't sure how to approach this particular part of what's now in this story. In the United States, it says, at least 120 students living in fraternity houses at the University of Washington have tested positive for the virus. No explanation in the story, the brief story I saw about this yesterday, as to why are 120 students living in fraternity houses at the University of Washington. I mean, one, I thought we were all closed for everything. Two, it is summer, and I mean, university campuses usually have programs going on in summer, yes, but I thought not now during the COVID-19 epidemic. I looked around, and it looked like everybody was holding their summer sessions virtually that I saw. I mean, I guess I didn't check the University of Washington, but I don't know. But that's also in the news, and why they were there, I have no idea. But okay, so they were, and guess what happened? That thing that they said would happen if 120 people lived together in fraternity houses happened. So you don't want to take the information from Israel? You don't like the information from France? You don't think South Korea is the gold standard? How about here in America? I don't know. I'm not sure what the excuse is to not look, but you just don't, and order the schools open, period. Public health officials say they want to see schools reopen this fall in some form. I say that, but conscious that keeping kids out of school can have damaging effects over the long run. There they're speaking about the damaging effects to the kids, which I understand and agree with. It will have, or could have, damaging effects. So's death, a damaging effect, generally speaking, but, whatever, we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. And President Trump, here we are, has been vocally in favor, or at least tweetingly vocal, I guess. How would you say that? In favor of allowing children to return to physical classrooms, tweeting Monday, in all caps, "School must open in the fall!" 3 exclamation points. And that may be all there is to it. He saw it on television, perhaps, or maybe it's something he thought of himself. He tweets out, "Schools must open in the fall." And so Ron DeSantis says, hey, President Trump says schools must reopen in the fall. We don't want him unhappy with us, even though he may, be out of power in the fall. But we don't want him unhappy with us because we know that if he is unhappy with us, something will happen. He'll tweet mean things about us and back primary opponents against us, even though he loses most of the primaries. And so therefore, we have to lick his boots and make sure schools are open in the fall. Education commissioner, that's you. Get that job done. But there's no medically sound way of doing it. I don't understand. You started to say the word medical, and I tuned out. Open the schools. So they did. But we continue in the Hill. Experts. Oh, no, not experts. Don't listen to them. Experts say the conditions for reopening will depend on how rapidly the coronavirus is spreading through local areas. And the executive order says, no, it won't. But let's listen to the experts just for a minute so we can laugh at them and say, you're dumb. You think people care about you. When you look at schools, there really is a delicate balance there. F delicacy. Who cares? There's no delicate balance. Open. There. Forget the delicate balance. I've solved the delicate balance problem. But there really is a delicate balance because obviously if you have massive, massive outbreaks where you have an exponential elevation of a curve of new infections in a particular area, and now at this point, the guys with the executive order pens go, exponential. I don't understand any of this stuff. And it's because the schools are closed. Don't you get it? If schools were open, I would understand exponential elevation. And they do have a point about that. But, of course, that's just, well, come to school, brick and mortar school. We'll teach you why you're in danger and why your parents might die. But at least it'll happen. You'll kill them accidentally and maybe damage your own health long term. We don't really know. But the point is you'll be learning when you do it. And you'll know why it's happening to you. And then you'll know all you need to know about how reckless and careless the decision was and how there's no accountability for it, thanks to Mitch McConnell preventing you from suing anybody about it. And your only remedy will be, I guess, tar and feathers or something more drastic. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Man, there's so much to go on with this. We're still in the Hill, reading through the Hill's summary article of the president's tweets driving this particular policy. The experts were speaking when we dozed off. When you look at schools, there really is a delicate balance there. Delicate, who cares? Because obviously, if you have a massive, massive outbreaks where you have an exponential elevation of a curve of new infections, I don't understand anymore, in a particular area, you really don't want to have the kids go to school there. I think we can all understand that part, right? But we really need to be much more flexible in what we can do to get the children back to school. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, you know who he is, said in an interview last week with the Journal of the American Medical Association, the principal, not the principal of the school, but the PLE principal, should be, how can we prudently, with sensitivity to the safety of the kids, get the children back to school? And two big guffaws from the executive order crowd on that one. How can we prudently, I don't even know what that means. Prude? You mean we should all be prudes? With sensitivity. Ooh, kumbaya, sensitivity. We don't like that. And safety of kids. Duh. How can we get them back to school? Who cares? Just send them. There you go. Put them on buses. That's how you safely get kids back to school. Okay. The American Association of Pediatrics, AAP, in case you weren't paying attention. By the way, wasn't that the acronym of, what was it? Maybe the production company that used to make Looney Tunes. I just all had this vision in my head of the lowercase AAP, or maybe it was APP. I don't know, but coming onto the screen before a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Anyway, that's not them. This is the American Association of Pediatrics. It's they helpfully explain an organization known for its caution. Okay, I will take your word for it on that one. Be careful around kids, like? Okay, sure. Though they published guidelines last week urging policymakers, and we urge you very strongly, urging policymakers to get children back in schools. But I think what they meant underlying all of that, since it's an organization known for its caution, right? I guess that note was supposed to tell you. They didn't say get the children back in schools safely, but they meant it because they're pediatricians and they're an organization known for its caution. So you're supposed to understand that. But we're talking, of course, to people who professionally don't understand things. The AAP strongly advocates that all policy considerations for the coming school year should start with a goal, not a mandate, but a goal of having students physically present in school, the association said in a statement, laying out safe back-to-school procedures. And so, again, what happened here is, I guess, beginning with Fox News, they read, well, the Pediatrics, the American Association of Pediatrics agrees with me. Schools should be open. And then they didn't read the rest of the article that says, here's how you could do it safely. Because I don't care about how to do it safely. I just care about how it should be done. So get it done. Because businessman in the White House. The importance of in-person learning, they continue over at the Association of Pediatrics, the importance of in-person learning is well documented, and there is already evidence of the negative impacts on children because of school closures in the spring of 2020. All correct, all necessarily understood in the context of, so in order to do it safely, we're going to have to jump through these various hoops, not simply order it done. But that's the boring part that the guys with the executive order pens don't read. The group said, time away from school interrupts supportive services for children in need of extra care, and it could lead to depression and even thoughts of suicide for children, as well as allow abuse to go undiscovered. Parts of all of that are true, although I have yet to meet the kid who says, if I don't get to go to school, I'm going to kill myself. I've not met that kid. I don't know him. He may be out there. I haven't met that one. Quite honestly, it's usually the opposite. If you make me go to school, I'll kill myself. But I'm sure there's at least one out there, right? Martin from The Simpsons might kill himself if he can't go to school. Lisa might be upset, but I have a feeling she could deal with it. I don't know. She seems a little more stable than Martin. Anyway, that's not real. But neither is the basis on which they're opening the schools. I mean, all of this is well and good. It's context that needs to be understood by sensible policymakers. It's just that's not what we've got. And you go back to school with the policymakers you have, not the policymakers you might wish to have at some future time. Florida on Monday ordered all public schools to open in the fall and laid out requirements they must meet if they wish to offer remote learning options. Okay. Local officials have some latitude to override the directive if coronavirus cases climb in their counties. That's good to know. But the order made clear that Florida officials expect schools to welcome students next month. And I guess it is next month. Could be late in the month. And I suppose maybe we should take a look at the actual executive order and parse it out. But I guess you could say, all right, we're open on August 1st, and then our local health officials, close us again on August 2nd. And that's our compliance with the executive order. But at least they leave the option there. And because that's not a given. We've seen a number of states issue executive orders from the governor's mansions saying we are going to obviate all local rules on this. Everything comes from the top down, from the state house down, and there is no local option, and there will be no local flexibility on things. We saw it happen in Texas with masking orders, etc., when localities like Houston and maybe Dallas and San Antonio considered some additional restrictions during the initial lockdown period, the state of Texas said there won't be any of that. Texas is going to be one size fits all. Even though we looked yesterday, this is just sort of an interesting metaphorical comparison. When we looked yesterday with Greg at the regionality and the geography of the coronavirus, we noted that Texas was in fact split into 4 regions, that there was part of it that was El Norte, part of it was Midlands, part of it was Deep South, part of it was Appalachia. And, Texas being as large as it is, never mind divided regionally like that. I can't imagine why anyone, particularly small local control government types and people who are usually opposed to unfunded mandates from above, all of a sudden found themselves extraordinarily comfortable with such things, and one size, after all, fitting all. All right, let's see. Continuing with the Hill article here, most school districts have not issued final plans for what a new year would look like. Many districts have surveyed parents, students, and teachers about their top priorities for the year. We got something like that up here in Virginia, along with a note yesterday in our email boxes, Monday, July 6th, saying, here are the options. You can go back to school, and we got a modified schedule, 2 days a week in school, 2 days a week, 3 days a week out of school. 2 of the out of school days, would include asynchronous distance learning, and the 5th day of the week is, I don't know what, they all, do the hokey pokey and turn themselves around for all I know. And that was option 1 if you wanted to go to school, the brick and mortar option. And the other one was you could opt out and do all distance learning. But they didn't, up until yesterday, they didn't tell us what that would entail. Because we tried the all distance learning for the end of the last semester, and it was kind of disastrous. And we were not looking forward to another year of that. So we were thinking initially, all right, we'll say, as risky as it may be, maybe that's the only thing to do to get any kind of education going on here, go back to school. Anyway, they came out with their explanations for what the 2 options were yesterday, along with a note that said, you got to make your choice by next Monday. So by the 13th, you're done. You got this week to consider whether your kid's going to risk life and death in the school 2 days a week. It may be worth something, may not be worth something, or go through the same ridiculous exercise we went through last time, but maybe with some changes. Call me back on Monday and let me know. Say, okay. What? And it's binding for the entire. Oh, yes, right. Okay. Yeah. Come in here. You do the rest. I'm tired. Do the rest of the show. It's binding. That's a good point. You're stuck with your decision. You can't change your mind based on, is this working? Forget the educational outcomes. The point really is you signed this dotted line, and that's that. Right. So it's binding, although I don't see how it could be binding. I can understand how it could be binding if you opt out for distance learning, and they've gone to pains to schedule and arrange things with a limited number of students and carefully balancing things so that not too many students are in one class and there's enough distance between them, et cetera, et cetera. If you change your mind and say, this is BS, it's not working, I'm going to have to risk sending the kids to school 2 days a week, let me go. They say, it took us forever to work out this schedule with 6 feet between the kids. We don't have any room. So no, forget it. Whereas I also was thinking, well, what if you are in school and you're like, the risk is too great, or it's not even worth being here. We might as well do this at home. They were saying, well, you can't opt out of it either, which to me doesn't really make any sense. To me, it would be like, that'd be fantastic. We'll have even more space between students. It doesn't cost us anything more to add you to the distance learning. So why not? And also, what are you going to do if one of or 10 or 1,000 of your kids in person in school get sick with coronavirus or anything else that's transmissible? You're going to tell them you're not allowed to stay home from school because of this plan we made? Or what? It seems to me that I'm almost certain that the plan that they have must include the idea of if you come down with coronavirus, if you get the COVID-19, while you're in school, we're going to keep you out of school, but you have to keep learning during that time. So we'll just add you. I would assume they would say you were going to start giving you the distance learning treatment, I guess. Right? I don't know what they will call it, but they want you to keep up with your work, right? Because you could be out for weeks. They can't just let you sit home at school, from school, and do nothing, which is what we used to do traditionally. When you had a cold and you might be back in 2 days, if you're going to be out for 3 weeks, they want to send you some homework home or whatever. Now they can do it by computer. Why is that not an option? And the answer is the executive order doesn't say it's an option, so it's not. I guess that's really it, even here in Virginia. So where were we in this article? Public health experts said school districts are looking for answers to a host of questions about what works in preventing the spread of the virus. Like lots of people are looking for that. Whether they should spend thousands on plexiglass to divide students from teachers or each other. How to best ventilate a classroom. Whether ultraviolet light can sterilize an environment. Injecting bleach, I guess, is also another possibility. How often students should wash their hands. These are just dozens. There are just dozens of practical questions, said Prabjot Singh, a health systems and global health expert at the Mount Sinai Health System and the Icahn, right, Carl Icahn School of Medicine in New York. Practitioners, everyday people, no comma, have to make decisions, and they have to defend those decisions to their constituents. Unless, of course, you simply issue an executive order and then say, I'm immune from lawsuit. And it's also illegal for you to yell at me in any really strident way. And also no demonstrations possible, and maybe we'll arrest you even for being angry. The clock is ticking toward August and September. In a note to parents, the Washington, D.C. public school system said their survey of almost 20,000 students, parents, and staff showed they wanted a consistent and predictable schedule. Me too. The freedom to choose between virtual and in-person learning, and an improved virtual learning component. And a unicorn. Our schools are planning for a hybrid schedule that includes both in-person and virtual learning, ensures classroom size meets social distancing measures, provides all students with equitable access to resources to learn outside of the classroom, and operation modifications to prioritize the health and safety of our entire school community. Chancellor Louis Farabee, maybe, F-E-R-E-B-E-E, Farabee, wrote to parents. Others are considering how to proceed. Well, that's a novel change. In Nevada, the Washoe County School Board will meet Tuesday to debate whether to hold classes completely in person, entirely remotely, or some hybrid of the two. Well, that is some novel thinking. What should we consider? How about the same thing we used to do, something completely different from what we used to do, or some combination of some of what we used to do and something completely different from what we used to do? Does that cover all the bases? I think so. I mean, I guess that would cover even what if we did more of what we used to do, but a little bit of what we've never done, or lots of what we've never done, but a little bit of what we used to do? Well, no, that's still a hybrid. All right, well, I guess we're covered. Those are our three options. Though, I guess one of the options, what about the option of doing absolutely nothing whatsoever, not educating anyone? Well, that would be 100% different from that's still covered. Okay, well, I can't think of anything else for us to consider. I think we're all covered here. As I'm sure you can imagine, the traditional school year and past routines have forever changed. However, our commitment to keeping your child safe has not changed. Superintendent Talisa Dixon wrote to parents. That would be, I guess, in Washoe County, Nevada. The experiences in other countries and the fast-rising case counts in most states across the country make it likely that at least some school systems will remain closed to in-person learning until epidemiological curves begin to bend downward. Others that open may be forced to close again if the virus spreads more widely. When it comes to schools, Fauci said, one size does not fit all. And that's, okay, that's not very helpful, but it's true. This is interesting, though. this part made me think. The fast rising case counts in most states across the country make it likely that at least some school systems will remain closed to in-person learning until epidemiological curves begin to bend downward. That said, Florida's epidemiological curve is bending upward. And they've just said, to hell with that, we're opening our schools. So I don't know. I mean, I guess there are some other states that may yet say, we aren't going to do this. But, and this I haven't seen reflected in the articles. I'll have to see if we can dig up an article that states this. But we were talking here at home before the show began that what might be driving Florida's decision-making and might be behind, if unspoken or not, Trump's tweet about schools must open in the fall. One of Trump's favorite tricks is to ask whether or not it's possible to force people to do the things he tweets by withholding federal funds if they don't agree to do it. And so it may be the case that Trump or whoever else is out there saying there will be no federal funds for education in your state, or for that matter, federal funds for anything in your state. He likes to do this across issue areas and across policy measures. We won't pay for any of the things that the federal government traditionally pays for in your state unless you open your schools. And everybody is kind of forced to do it, and they can possibly game the system, opening it for a day and then reclosing it. But Fauci reminds us that one size does not fit all, but Trump doesn't agree. My size fits all. Certainly any clothes that Donald Trump have, you can get into them. Most people will be able to get into them. They don't fit you, but you'll be able to get into them. That's for sure. For the vast majority of us, I think it will work. And that's close enough for him. One size does not fit all, but who cares? Do what I say. I am a quote-unquote businessman in the White House. There's a little bit more here. There are going to be some counties, maybe even some regions, where the infection is so low, there's absolutely no problem whatsoever with just making no changes in schools, he said. Maybe, for the time being, I'm sure, is what he would be saying about that. I don't know whether it's an inevitability that the disease will get there too, but I guess I could see it. There are certainly places where there's low instances of it. And there may be other areas of the country where the viral dynamics are so intense that you've really got to be careful when you make that decision. Or not. You could just throw caution to the wind. That is an option. Like so many other facets of society, what was once normal may not return until a successful vaccine is proven and distributed widely. There still is that hanging out there as a possibility. Having people on edge the entire year without knowing what to look for, it's just going to be an incredibly exhausting year for everybody involved, Singh said. Now we're at the end of the Hills article, so that's all we've got lined up on that particular subject. Although I did grab another Twitter thread that sort of addresses this and everything around it from Stephen White. Maybe you are a Twitter follower of Stephen White, the as I understand, a retired NFL player. Very frequently tweets about sports, true, but also a very political tweeter, and that may be either of those two options may have been how you came to his Twitter feed. He tweets under the handle of SGW94. And, as is frequently the case with football players, that's probably his initials and perhaps the number he played under, unless that's just his favorite year or something, 94. We don't really know. But at any rate, Stephen White has this, I thought, this really kind of encapsulates what's going on in his Twitter thread. This conversation, and he's talking about retweeting here the tweet from Andy Hutchins. Who's Andy Hutchins? I don't know. It says in his Twitter bio here, Alligator Army, which I guess is that supposed to mean he's like, maybe is a Florida guy, a University of Florida Gators thing? I don't know. SB Nation. So he writes for the Sports Network, right? And also written elsewhere online. Hutchins has this tweet. Kids being less likely to suffer from or transmit COVID-19 doesn't make them immune. And linking here to an Orlando Sentinel piece about this and saying any return to normal or opening of anything post-lockdown has been playing the percentages. We could instead have actually flattened or crushed the curve, but we didn't. There's a whole thread attached to that. And Stephen White, though, picks up on the conversation here and says, this conversation makes me want to scream because people seem to be okay playing Russian roulette with kids when in the same breath admitting we don't know enough about this virus yet. It also never seems to factor in teachers, which is an amazing thing that we seem to be forgetting about in all this. If one tests positive, like one teacher, does the whole school shut down? I don't know what the answer is to that. I mean, I do know what the answer is. In Florida, the answer will be no. The school stays open because that's what we're doing. Schools stay open. What epidemiologists would say? Maybe. Or at least that teacher isolates and depending on the quality of the contact tracing, we may have to shut down the school. But we might be able to identify everyone we need to isolate in order to keep the school open, too. That's a possibility. Now, Stephen continues here. What happens if a teacher dies during the school year from COVID? That's a valid question, too. What effect would that have on a 5 to 6 year old, right? For all the people who are saying, well, if Martin doesn't get to go to school, he might contemplate suicide. Well, let's talk about the traumatic issues of having your teacher die in the middle of the year from a disease that maybe you brought into the school with you because we don't know how this goddamn thing works yet. Or, hey, the odds are against it, but we have enough kids in school and enough schools in this country that it'll happen somewhere. What if you kill 2 teachers in the same classroom? I don't want to, we don't need to worry about 2 versus 1. 1's quite enough. What about classmates? What about classmates' parents, grandparents, right? What if you're constantly dealing with grief issues in kindergarten, because every week somebody's grandma dies and no one can figure out why this is happening? Because kids don't get it or transmit it, except that's not really true. So let's continue on here. What about older teachers who can't risk it? That's true, too. That was another piece that we discussed here at home, pointed out to me in New York Times the other day. Professors at the nation's universities, the cohort of professors, I guess, on average, just considerably older than the average age of public school teachers. And they're saying, hey, unless we feel safe, we're just not going to head back into that classroom. We either retire rather than deal with it or go on strike or God knows what. But no, we can't be forced back in. And there's to date, no one has contemplated the president simply blurting out, well, I'm going to make an executive order that says all colleges have to open. Well, what about the private ones? I don't care. No difference between public and private when it comes to me indulging myself. Everyone knows that. Why not have an executive order that says that? Stephen continues here. And where's the money going to come from to desanitize on a regular, I think we want to say sanitize, disinfect or sanitize, not desanitize. We don't need any money to desanitize on a regular basis when public schools are regularly underfunded. That's the rest of the question. We understand what he meant by that one. Sanitize on a regular basis on your budget. But in case you are looking for desanitization, I'll do it for you cheap. In fact, I've already committed pro bono to desanitize Trump's grave as often as I can. Anyway, what about bus drivers? He very rationally asks. I could literally list hundreds of questions off the top of my head that nobody has an answer for, but we are still moving ahead full steam in a country with the worst response by far to this virus. And still, by the way, PPE shortages nationwide. And he raises another great point and leads us into an entirely different conversation. But yes, let's keep focusing on whether kids maybe won't get it or maybe won't spread it or maybe will only get inflammation when we also don't know the long-term effects of that inflammation disorder either. I'm sure that will work out well for everybody. And here he includes, this is a link from last month on continued PPE shortages. This tweet caught my eye too. From the Boston Globe, let me see. I'll open up the article so we can grab the headline of it and you can see what he's talking about. The headline is, it's like pulling teeth. There's still a PPE shortage, and a second wave could send medical workers into crisis mode. Written by Naomi Martin. Last month, all it has is the updated date, June 21st. So just not that long ago. But again, Boston Globe, noting that they still have a PPE shortage. Some of it has been lightly alleviated, but I think pretty much everybody's still living, hand to mouth on PPE because Jared Kushner pirated it all and is in charge of distributing it, and I'm sure is taking a cut wherever he can, either for himself or just to reimburse his friends or I guess pay off his friends, stuff money in their pockets because they can. But we've moved on from that because there are so many other deadly crises every single day, or tweets from Trump like, we should kill all the black people. Oh, I didn't mean that. And my press secretary will point out that I only meant we should, kill all the black people who there's a widespread consensus we should kill. I don't know. It's something. Or I didn't say that. Well, here is the tweet. Yeah, but you people don't know how to read because you haven't been in school for so long. And that's why I have an executive order opening schools. Whatever. Denial they have to do. We'll still have a PPE shortage. And I guess let me just read the last tweet from this thread before we cut out for our next break. Like I said, Steven says, I can keep asking these questions that nobody can answer because I have time today, but just the ones I've asked so far should give most rational people pause. And indeed, they will. At the same time, by the way, just before checking out here, I happened to see New York Times with their own entry into the We Still Have Problems cavalcade here. Months into virus crisis, U.S. cities still lack testing capacity. With cases surging, some cities are seeing long testing lines and slow results. This, of course, standing in contravention to Trump's claim that we're the best and we lead everybody and nobody can test like we can. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see, I just was poking around to see, is there anything in the Google News here that can help me connect federal funding to Trump's order that schools reopen? And I found a piece, but it doesn't look to me like it's going to connect this thing very definitively. Yeah, let's see. I mean, we'll just run through this quickly. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump will discuss how to reopen schools safely on Tuesday. Today's Tuesday, and I don't know what to tell you. There's no chance that President Trump and Melania Trump are prepared to discuss how to reopen schools safely to our satisfaction today or any other day. But again here, somebody in the White House purports that the president will spend time on this activity and will satisfy us in this activity today. He will not, but, afterwards, like the White House press corps will say, Kayleigh, is that right? Is that her first name? Kayleigh, the president said that his event today would outline and discuss how to reopen schools safely on Tuesday. However, as it turns out, he just spent the time criticizing Bubba Wallace, a NASCAR driver, and saying that he ought to apologize to NASCAR for having seen a noose. So, yesterday you wouldn't explain why Bubba Wallace was being called upon by the president to apologize. Today, can you tell us why he continues not to explain that, but that he spent all of his time on the school reopening issue talking about Bubba Wallace? And you know the answer to that. No, he didn't. The president gave the best plan ever. Well, he literally didn't even say the word schools once in the 4 hours that he talked about Bubba Wallace. He did. He said it. If you look at the transcript, you will find the letter as S-C-H-O and L in there. And that's our answer. Or possibly the answer is he did say it. No, he didn't. Well, F you, he did. This press conference is over. They could just go that route. That's a much easier way of doing it. So anyway, many parents and schools have been grappling with the issue. We are helpfully informed by WNYT, by the way, whose work I'm reading here, Albany, New York's NBC affiliate. The American Academy of Pediatrics, who we read about before, is recommending that children go to school to keep them from falling behind. That's a helpful summary of things. Also at home, in between shows, we've been lamenting the quality of writing and local news sites, particularly, I guess, those that are TV focused but want to have a written component online. And I guess they're just not willing to pay a great deal for people to do it well. But that's the summation of what the American Academy of Pediatrics stands. Children should go to school so they can learn. Thank you. I'm glad you went to medical school. The exact detail, it's not your fault. You put out a good report. It's this reporter's fault. Anyway, the exact details of President Trump's discussion are not known because it hasn't happened yet. And even if its script says school, 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 he'll say Bubba Wallace, Bubba Wallace. Did you see my inauguration? Here's my electoral college map, whatever. Officials have been struggling with how to balance advancing education while protecting children's health. This is a very basic article. Studies show that children are less likely to get the coronavirus or fall seriously ill, but the potential long-term impacts are unknown. I don't think I even agree with that. There is concern from parents and teachers in places where cases are surging, and scientists are warning now that the coronavirus could potentially be airborne. Briefly mentioned that yesterday. Sent out an article in the recap that covered that if you want to spend some time reading about the science behind that. However, health experts believe there are options to send children back to school, modifying the schedules, separation of desks, wearing masks under certain circumstances. Dr. Anthony Fauci said masks may need to be worn indoors even when social distancing. Public places may require better ventilation. I assume they need to wear, says in there, Dr. John Torres. But again, the writing, here's the quote, right? Masks need to be worn indoors even when social distancing, which is an important point, which is why I said it twice. Public places may require better ventilation, comma, close quotes, Dr. John Torres. You know, send this reporter, maybe that's what we need. The reporter has to go back to school. The kids can stay home. Any changes that schools decide to make could be costly, so the Senate's top Republican, that would be Mitch McConnell, has said he wants to include school funding in the next coronavirus relief bill. There's the funding connection, but it's unclear if President Trump will speak about potential funding Tuesday. I imagine if he does, and if Mitch McConnell does include it, it will be funding might be provided, but contingent on your following a basically one-size-fits-all federal mandate to open your schools 5 days a week, brick and mortar, whether you use them or not. They got to be open. And parents have to have the option of poisoning their children there in order for you to receive any of the funding. Of course, if the funding is, they'll have to tinker with the funding so that it's not just for coronavirus response. Because if our coronavirus response is don't open the schools, then we don't need that extra. I'd love to have extra money. If you're giving, you could rename your school district the Ayn Rand School District and then apply for a PPE loan for it. But maybe they'll have to attach the rest of regular funding, either education or otherwise, state funding, in order to induce compliance with this. It's unclear if President Trump will speak about potential funding Tuesday. In New York, Governor Cuomo and state officials have not decided if schools will reopen in the fall. Currently, the state is having schools submit possible reopening plans. In Massachusetts, state officials have released a plan to reopen schools. And I guess that's helpful to people in the Albany area. Why Massachusetts? Well, okay, they're up near that direction, and so I suppose that makes some sense. Is that right? Now I got to look at the maps. Well, like, it was just Massachusetts just thrown in there because we need another state besides New York. Massachusetts, fine. Let me see. Albany, New York. I mean, we know it's upstate, but and it's in that notch in the weird shape that is New York. Let's see. So I mean, it's relatively close. I mean, it's close, as close certainly to Vermont as it is to Massachusetts, but I don't know. They're ignoring Vermont for some reason, and I guess Massachusetts would be due east of Albany, and I guess people are in the viewing area there. Maybe the Albany television stations capture southern Vermont and western Massachusetts, and I don't know. Are they trying to tell us that there's nobody in that area of Vermont, or Vermont hasn't done anything? I don't know. No answer for that, but that'll be beyond our purview. Let's just do some more COVID-19 news, because everyone needs to be scared to death here. Here's something I hadn't thought about, but, I guess it stands to reason. We all worried about the meat packing plants at one point, and then we forgot about them. Or it was in the back of our minds, but we stopped talking about it every day because Trump got mad at a NASCAR driver. But the food chain is compromised elsewhere. This doesn't seem super necessary. It's not an essential business per se. It does involve food. Pistachio nut plant workers. You get the idea. Although I guess, people who work on the plants that produce pistachios may also be in trouble. But here we're talking about the manufacturing plant, the processing plant. Dozens of pistachio plant workers infected with COVID-19. Like anywhere else, it shouldn't surprise you. This time, our source is KQED, which is, another place. Another broadcast thing. West Coast, let's look it up and find out. I always like to know kind of what we're looking at. KQED. Wikipedia will tell me what that is. It's a public media outlet based in San Francisco, California. So I bet there were a number of you that said, I know it's San Francisco, but I can't tweet to you that quickly. Or I'm not awake because it's West Coast. Operates radio station KQED in so San Francisco Public Radio. Will tell us about the pistachio nut crisis of 2020. We have to name it something. Remigio Ramirez, who's in charge of machinery maintenance. He's alliterative, as is his job. In charge of machinery maintenance at... you see where I'm going here? And now I got to read you the whole sentence. Remigio Ramirez, who's in charge of machinery maintenance at a pistachio processing plant. It's like Dr. Seuss runs the public radio in San Francisco. Repeatedly tried to tell his supervisors that he was sick. Supervisors, I'm sick, he said. I guess. But they wouldn't let him go home or take time off to be tested for the coronavirus. Why? Because no one's going to figure this out. People have their eye on the meat plants, but they won't know that we're being mean and evil at the pistachio plants because we have great PR and famous people doing pistachio nut ads. So there you go. I started feeling sick like 3 days before the diagnosis, and I asked my supervisor to let me go home, and he said there was a lot of work and not enough employees because they're all sick. Ramirez said, then I made an appointment to go to the doctor, asked permission again, but by the time I was let off work, the clinic was closed. Ramirez, 54, has worked at the Primex Farms plant, located in Wasco, Wasco, in the San Joaquin Valley for more than 12 years. The company, which processes more than 60 million pounds a year of nuts, that's how it says, 60 million pounds of nuts a year, that's how I would put it, but I'm not KQED, and you know how it is, and I recognize your right to nonconformity there, has about 400 year-round packing plant workers, many of whom earn minimum wage, not surprisingly. Despite dozens of infections like Ramirez's, the Primex plant did not shut down until June 26th. That was 10 days after Ramirez said he tested positive with the coronavirus and 16 days after the first case of COVID-19 was confirmed at Primex. The plant reopened with limited operations on July 1st, after voluntarily shutting down for 5 days, employees said. But as they returned to work, the workers said they are still worried and do not feel safe, like the kids at school. As of July 1st, 78 workers at the Primex plant, about 1/5 of its year-round staff, have been infected with COVID-19, along with 34 family members, including children who will later go to school and give it to the people who don't even work at the pistachio plant. According to the labor union United Farm Workers, the youngest, 9 months old. Thanks a lot. We're all really appreciative of that. We spoke to the workers and told them to share with us their COVID results, said Armando Elenes. He's the secretary-treasurer of United Farm Workers, which is helping the workers even though they are not unionized. Very nice. The numbers are quickly changing by the hour. They send us texts and or photos of their results. Primex did not respond to repeated questions. To answer questions, what? I'm sorry. Okay. Primex did not respond to repeated requests to answer questions. Okay. I thought that was worse than it was. About the outbreak or the precautions it's now taking. However, its spokeswoman sent a statement June 29th saying that its processing facility is part of the food production and distribution system identified as critical infrastructure during the pandemic. And here we may have gotten a little loose with things, right? Are pistachio nuts really critical infrastructure? Is it absolutely necessary that we have them? Things they are wonderful and everyone wants to crack them open and crunch them. But, we also have other kinds of nuts, or maybe we don't have very many nuts this month. It would be okay. But, it's food and we didn't want to parse it any more than that. Okay, so what that means is it's our job and our responsibility to continue to produce safe and wholesome products for our customers while doing everything within our power to protect the health and well-being of our employees and the communities in which we live and work, said Primex spokesman Mojgan Amin, whose I hope his nickname is not Edie, but it doesn't look very good for the folks there. I mean, bottom line, I would say, this and meat processing for that matter, what they're saying is, well, we're going to do everything we can to produce safe and wholesome products for our customers while doing everything we can to protect the health and well-being of our employees. Bottom line is they are going to get coronavirus and they're going to give it to one another. But the science we have tells us that the coronavirus cannot survive on a pistachio nut long enough to make it all the way through the food chain. In other words, consumers are not going to get COVID-19 from eating the pistachio nuts that infected workers produce. So that's a wholesome and safe product, and that's as much as we can do to protect the well-being of our employees. We can't do anything. They're going to fall ill. They're going to cough on your pistachio nuts, but because it takes so long to get them to market and to you and to eat them, and the virus can't survive on a pistachio nut in plastic, that fulfills our responsibility. We've technically done everything we could as defined by the dictates of money and the business. Everything we could to not lose money, still get the nuts in the bag, and not kill any consumers. Job done. And this is the approach that we're going to be taking with our schools as well. So that's good news. And it takes an Amin to come up with this program, apparently. The company reopened July 1st with a limited number of workers and hours. It is expected to reopen with full operations today. I don't know if that's yesterday or what. Analyst Gaspar Rivera Salgado of the UCLA Labor Center said farm workers and packing plant workers are often left unprotected and vulnerable to the virus. The farm workers were declared essential, and they really are, but the state never placed specific health protocols since everything had to be done by the employers. This according to Rivera Salgado. There is an estimate that 65 to 80% of farm workers are immigrants, and many are afraid of speaking up. That's another problem. Rivera Salgado said that cramped living conditions are also a problem when a worker arrives home and unknowingly infects family members. They are essential workers, but for companies, they are not worth it more than the production, he said. I think we know what they're getting at here. Let's see. This goes on for a little bit longer, and perhaps we can continue to consider this, because why not look at these things in depth? Workers said in a virtual press conference last week that the company failed to give them protective gear and didn't follow CDC guidelines. Initially, the company sold the workers, masks for $8 a piece. They said you can get a better price from Jared Kushner. Wow. $8 a piece for the masks. I don't know what kind of masks they were getting, but no masks are $8 a piece. And they sold them to them. I mean, I don't eat pistachios at the moment. I like pistachios. I never buy them because they're expensive and not particularly good for you, I don't think. But, you know, and I know there are a lot of people who, let's see, we had boycotts of pistachios, I've heard before. We've had boycotts of almonds because they were so water intensive. This is really nuts. They got to do something. Ugh, oh my God, I just said it's really nuts. Well, they really should do something about this. You know, this is gonna lead, I think, to some consumer backlash. The workers said those who got infected were advised to keep it confidential. Why? Because they didn't want to be embarrassed, and you'll fire you if you don't. And if they requested time off to be quarantined, they were told to resign instead. Some workers said the company never told them about the infections. They said they learned from other workers and media reports. Now the workers are demanding social distancing, payment of wages during shutdowns, thorough and daily sanitation of facilities, COVID-19 testing of all current and new employees, and free protective equipment. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you'll get it, but that's the demand. United Farm Workers representative said the company is now testing workers at the plant. The company agreed that workers 65 and over can stay home if they're afraid to go back to work, and they'll get paid, and that workers, regardless of age, who test positive for COVID-19 can stay home and get paid. However, workers still don't know if they'll be paid for the days the company was closed. So that could end up being their option. And I don't know how many workers over 65 they have, that they're not just firing because you're bad for our insurance. Primex confirmed in its statement that, unfortunately, a number of employees tested positive for the virus. That's the extent of their statement. In response, we have temporarily suspended our operations and instituted a rigorous testing program along with a number of other protective measures, Amin said. Employees who test positive or who exhibit any COVID-related symptoms will be directed to stay home on sick leave with full pay. He did not offer any details about the protective measures. Primex said it conducted a deep cleaning of the plant, but workers said the company merely conducted its regularly scheduled in-house fumigation against pests, a normal monthly practice. That falls far short of a complete disinfection of all facilities against coronavirus by a specialized outside firm, according to United Farm Workers. Ramirez said his symptoms initially were similar to a common cold, but then his body started feeling hot while his feet were extremely cold. Interesting. That day it was my wife's birthday. I didn't feel well, so when I arrived home from work, I just walked directly to my room, Ramirez said. The next day, when I woke up, I saw my wife and daughters were very sick too. Happy birthday. Ramirez's wife told him to get tested for COVID-19. When he called the Kern County number, he was told there were no immediate tests available. I didn't have time to wait, so I went to a local clinic and I paid like $200 to get the test, he said. Ramirez said his wife and daughters, 21 and 12, all tested positive too. Never in my life I thought I would be getting coronavirus, Ramirez said. Well, up until last year, anyway. Since then, I have tried to be strong for my family. They worry about me, but I try to get up every day and have a normal life. This is the first time in 12 years that he has been home so much. He's been working 7 days a week, had been working 7 days a week, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. because got to have those pistachios. Ramirez has made $21 per hour for the past 9 months, and before that, he earned minimum wage for about 12 years. Ramirez plans to return to the plant next week, but he doesn't know if he'll get paid for the 2 weeks of missed work. He's not even sure if he'll get his job back. No one from the company has talked to him since he told them he tested positive. His supervisors were upset when he got sick. Not like, oh no, you're sick, but what? Who's going to do your job? There are only 2 of us employees that have a lot of experience with the machinery, he said. The supervisors were mad because of work, not because of my health, as you might expect. And that's the end of that particular article. Let's see, we got a couple of comments here that we might work into our program here. Ricky up in Prince Edward Island is commenting here. Firstly, quite a while ago, saying, I think the issue on schools opening will be if parents are willing to send their kids back. But then again, as we were talking about it being Florida, you never know what that means, parents being willing to send the kids back. They may have no idea that there's any danger. If the schools are open, it must be safe. Or I love Donald Trump and therefore Ron DeSantis, and they can do no wrong, so I will send my kids to school even though the president paints himself orange. Also noting here, if parents must send their kids to school, are the kids allowed to wear masks? Allowed to? That's an open question in Florida. We don't know whether they'll allow it or not. You would assume that if they wanted to, they could. They might not be required to, but it may be the case that they can't. Who knows? And then another comment just 15 minutes ago or so, something I don't understand. She says, I see friends in the U.S. traveling across the country, but until recently, I wasn't able to leave my province without a valid reason. Could this be why the virus is spreading so rapidly in the U.S.? Yes, sure, you bet. That and nobody believing that masks help. I still see people insisting, pointing to scientific literature and telling people who say you should wear a mask, pointing back and saying, you should read some science, you idiot. Look here, this study says masks don't work. And they don't say anything further. They may or may not have read the study themselves. But, of course, this is one of those studies that says, yeah, it's true. Cloth masks won't prevent you from inhaling COVID or the coronavirus. That is true. That's not what the point of the masks are. We all acknowledge that. But they just point at it and say, this scientific journal says masks don't work. So you're the one who's stupid for believing masks work. Well, they work for something else. I don't know what to say to people like this. No, don't lock your house when you leave. Keys don't work. Locks don't work. Don't use them. It's been proven by science. Well, I'm reading your study, and this is a question. I don't know why this question was asked, but the question was, are locks and keys effective for delivering nutrients to preschool children? No, they are not. That's it. Leave your houses and homes unlocked, everybody. Don't use anything. It's just not effective. Well, they are effective for closing your home against intruders. That's true. But you were asking whether they are effective sources of nutrition in preschool youth, and they aren't. I mean, it's just a different function. But then people are still out there. I love that they're out there pointing at saying, read a book, you moron. Don't you understand anything about science? And, yeah, I understand what this guy said about science. But, yeah, absolutely. We have not restricted travel here. There have been a couple of states that say they're going to have some sort of quarantine requirement now if you're coming from a high infection area. I don't know how that's supposed to work. I don't know of anybody who has been involuntarily pulled aside and forced into quarantine because they went from Arizona to New Jersey. But I'm not in New Jersey. I don't know. But yeah, there seems to be no restrictions for interstate travel here. That's just no. So the fact that you've been restricted, I don't know whether that's like what happens if you leave Prince Edward Island. Like if you really tried, I assume you probably could because the dragnet couldn't be that, well, it's only a couple ways off of Prince Edward Island, I suppose. So maybe it's easier to trap you there. But if you're elsewhere and there are land borders, I mean, do the Mounties come thundering out of the hills on horseback and scoop you up? Probably not, right? So I don't know. But here in the United States, I haven't tried to travel from state to state. But that's because I'm staying home. But I don't know. I'm not aware of any generalized travel restrictions that are truly being enforced. All right. More on the coronavirus front. I also happened to catch this tweet here from the popular account, the Horse Whisperer, right? Who is tweeting around this story, a fact check from CNN on Trump. Everything he said was a lie. Apparently, Trump adding to his, regular roundup of lies, claiming that U.S. coronavirus deaths, the death rate is, I didn't even realize that this was a claim he was making. Fact-checking Trump's claims that U.S. coronavirus death rate is the lowest worldwide. Well, that's just like a duh kind of a claim. But I mean, I guess people aren't watching as closely as I am looking at worldometers every day. But no, not really. We're in the top 10 lists I think, or it's certainly in the top 15 in deaths per million worldwide. I'm a little bit late on our break music here, so we'll cut out at an unusual point. That'll bring us to our last segment. Just wanted to update you on the fact that he was out there lying that stupidly, in addition to the claims about testings that he's made, now lying about the death rate. That seems to be the most fashionable thing. Ron DeSantis following suit, insisting that Florida's death rate is fantastic too. It's not. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Hi, Joan. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
I will tell you in just a second how I am, because I want to I just realized we are re-entering from the break, and welcome back, everybody, to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. And I've just got Joan McCarter here on the line, and I guess you would have heard her say she's fine. So with that out of the way, we're right back into it. Welcome back to the show. It's been a hell of a week and a hell of a day this morning. Learning all sorts of fun new facts about how the government has no concerns whatsoever about sending many of us possibly to the meat grinder of the coronavirus via ordering our children back to school, no matter what local authorities say or what the conditions are on the ground. So that sounds kind of fun. So we were just catching up on that. And then the latest outbreak in California, not to get as much attention as places elsewhere, but apparently pistachio nut processing plant workers, a new outbreak among them. But, with all of our eyes on the meat processing plants, I guess we missed this one. And just another one of those things where, without attention to it, there was all kinds of horrible exploitation going on. The bosses basically saying, if you take time off because you're sick, one, you're not allowed to tell anybody you're sick. You're definitely not allowed to tell them what you have. And also you're fired on top of it all. But if you're interested in protecting your health, I thought this one was fun. You can come to work in a mask. You just have to buy your masks from us.
Right, the company store.
At $8 a pop. So, yeah, the old company store coming right back into play. It's interesting how many years we've rewound the clock on things over the past couple decades. The Republican policy has always been about rewinding the clock to the make America great again, like when we forced everybody to spend every penny they had at the company store back in the day.
It's very much a Gilded Age version of America that they want.
Yeah. And I mean, okay.
And that includes not having those uppity women and people of color voting.
Right. Yeah. Well, they just get in the way of everything. So, what's going on besides the pistachio nut outbreak? Lots, of course.
Lots of food processing outbreaks. Yeah. It's not just meat. It's
right.
Lots and lots of different food processing places. Yeah. And that's driven a lot of the cases here in Idaho, which early on, now it's the early reopening that we went through, and it's bars and restaurants that have turned into the hot spots.
Right, when you get off work at whatever food processing plant or on the farm and you head out for a drink, and the people who have nothing to do with your area of agriculture are next to you and get the virus and bring it to their place of employment and spread it around. It's fun. Everybody gets to share. It's nice. It's very communal that way.
Yay.
Yeah,
We're all going to die, Kagro.
Yeah, well, yes. Trump says do it sooner. He's a community organizer in a way. He's organizing the spread of coronavirus among the communities. So we thought they were done with
what's from the perspective of what I've been focusing on for 3 months, what's really 4 months now frightening about this is Trump's, well, we're just going to have to learn to live with it.
Yeah, right.
Means it's going to be a lot harder for us to get the kind of help we need from Congress and from the White House in order to continue to live with this, in order to pay rent, in order to have a house, food.
Right.
Because, well, hey, we're all open. The economy's back, guys. Never mind unemployment. Never mind food insecurity. Never mind evictions. We're back.
Right. You have to live with it. Just maybe not for very long, but the virus isn't going anywhere. You are.
Right.
Just, So I guess that'll become their excuse
you're all
for
back
everything.
at work.
Yeah.
It's McConnell's already said he's going to keep the next bill under $1 trillion. I don't know if, he has a better chance of doing that if the White House is saying, well, we don't need it. We're back to work. So, this will be the mop-up effort.
I guess so, yeah.
Because previously it was Mnuchin who saw what was going on more or less and insisted on working with Pelosi and Schumer to get more than $3 trillion passed. Because McConnell was still looking at a very small number.
Yeah,
and that's what he's going to insist on this time in the next bill. When the CBO says the hit to the economy over the next decade is going to be a minimum of $16 trillion. Oh.
Okay. Yeah, well, I guess that's learn to live with it just becomes an all-purpose excuse for anything, right? Not only we're not going to test you or we're not going to help you recover, we're not going to pay for your lost wages while you recover because you're supposed to learn to live with it, but also, if the economy collapses or your industry has been destroyed, well, that's part of learning to live with it.
Yeah.
So just whatever they don't feel like doing, you'll have to live with that thing. So, okay, well, now we know their answer to everything.
Pretty much. There is some Black Lives Matter, Black Businesses Matter attention now being paid, finally, to the fact that the PPP program that they created, the Small Business Loan Program, which Daily Kos benefited from, we did get one of the loans, has not been particularly good for the smallest of businesses and the people who needed it the very most. Now that the Trump administration, the Small Business Administration, has made those loans public, we can see where a lot of them did not go. And, some did go to small businesses. Some went to places like Daily Kos, where, we had a relationship with bankers already, but a lot did not go to the communities that need it most. So they are looking at ways that they can reconfigure the program to try to help businesses that are in underbanked communities, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, all of the people that were left out in the first rounds.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the banks are saying, really, these are tiny loans. It's stupid for us to even be involved. It's just a hassle for us. We have to make sure that they're following all of the commitments for the loans to be forgiven. If you want these to be forgiven in the first place, then why are we doing them as loans? Why do you have to have middlemen? Right. Just give them grants.
Yeah. That's the thing that would make sense.
It makes the most sense of all, and there's some bipartisan push for that in the Senate now, with Steve Daines out of Montana and Cory Booker introducing legislation along with Dale Kildee in the House, a Democrat from Michigan, to create a $50 billion loan program that would do that. They would funnel the money to states and localities, and then they could make grants to the businesses and to the nonprofits in their areas that need the most. I hope this happens. I hope this happens because in a lot of instances, it's nearly too late, but
yeah, I guess in those that it wouldn't be, you want to be on the ground and ready to, if there's people to be saved, why not give it a shot? And I guess if the banks, I'm sure that they designed the thing thinking, well, banks will process these and we'll be happy to have them do it, and they'll be happy to do it because they'll take a cut somehow. But if they're saying, it's really not worth our time to do this, just give the money out. Why did you make us do the paperwork?
Pretty much.
Then you've had your fill. Okay, fine. Maybe now you can.
And if you're intending these to be forgivable loans, then just make them grants.
Yeah, I never really understood that unless it was some sort of bookkeeping.
It was a Republican thing. It was Susan Collins and Marco Rubio, and Republicans are going to think of a way to boost the banks.
Yeah, that part I understood.
Back at the beginning, the banks were okay with it. And then it all turned into a mess. The Small Business Administration under Trump did not do a very good job of launching it. The program had already begun before they had given all of the guidelines and the regulations to the banks to follow. So from the get-go, the banks were having a hard time with it.
That's actually pretty amazing now that I think about it. And it should be another death blow for, we got to have a businessman in the White House in order to get things done. The idea of they couldn't even design a program to give banks free money that the banks would like. So, what? How did that happen? Yeah. You want some free money? You know what? Not anymore. It's just, this actually is bad. Not that I don't feel guilty about keeping the money or anything like that. It's just, it's too much annoyance to get the free money. Yeah. That's how bad your program is.
And it's slow. It's very, very slow. This was $670 billion that could have just immediately, had it been a Paycheck Guarantee Act, which some House members were pushing, which would just basically have underwritten people's payrolls. If they'd put that $670 billion into doing that, we would be in a whole different world right now.
True.
People would have had their paychecks secured. They wouldn't be so desperate to go back to work because they have to go back to work so they can continue to live.
Right. Well, we probably
or they could get sick and die.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we still have that option. They probably could have done this faster and maybe even more efficiently just by piling cash up on street corners around the country and saying, first come, first serve, come and get it.
It really is. It's hindsight is always 2020, but we could have looked back to 2008 and 2009 and the stimulus then to see.
We have done this.
You're gonna need a lot more money than you're talking about right now. And there are a lot more effective ways of delivering it that'll keep the economy afloat.
And
give money to people.
That's the part that's kind of puzzling. I understood where Republicans were saying, okay, we want to keep the numbers down. That's a very Republican instinct, even if it's the wrong one, and it's known to be the wrong one. And I guess maybe it's just Republican instinct again saying, I don't like the idea of calling these things grants because that makes us look like we're giving the money away. And even though we are, can we call them loans so that it looks on paper like we're not, but if it's forgivable at the outset and everybody knows it, I don't understand the value of it except really literally being able to say, no, technically they're loans.
And here's where it's just so screwed up. The forgiveness is a gamble. The forgiveness of the loans is based on their ability to continue to pay people who are not working for them, but to keep their employees on payroll when they have no indication that they're going to be able to reopen again and have profits with which they can repay loans. So if they can't keep everybody on payroll, they're going to have to repay the loan.
Oh, right. So,
and their business is going to be shut down.
I understand
they're not going to have income.
Right.
So they're going to have to go into default, and then they're never going to be able to get credit again. For a lot of businesses, it made no sense to do this because it was too much of an unknown whether they would be able to indeed keep people on and reopen and survive.
Yeah, I guess I didn't. I mean, I knew that was the case, but I understood the instinct of saying, well, we want people to use these loans to pay payroll and try and keep things stable. But yeah,
and
I guess
had we had a government response to this that made any sense, had we had testing, had we had lockdown orders that were enforceable, had we had masks, maybe it would have worked. Maybe 2 months in, 3 months in, we would be able to say, okay, it's safe now. Yeah. People can go back to work.
Yeah, I guess that was supposed to be the thinking. That once again, we designed the program on the basis of, well, here in Congress, we'll design the program to
as work. If we had a functioning government.
Yeah, right. Because we'll get out of this, as opposed to, oh, well, there is what we haven't considered is what if the executive branch is actually going to sabotage our ability to control or tamp down on the spread of this virus and reopen safely? Have we designed for that? No, we never would. It didn't occur to us. Really? You've seen who the president is, right? It's a long time he's been the president.
Again, back to the hindsight. When you think about, we just went through this a decade ago. Can we look at what you need to get an economy running again? You need a consumer base that's got money to spend.
Yeah. And
I'm having a pessimistic day, Kagro. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Although it does seem to happen every Tuesday. But I think it's just every day, and we're only sampling Tuesdays.
Right.
That's all. It's a sampling
pretty much is every day.
Right.
Pretty
Okay.
much is.
So right.
Well, if there's a glimmer of hope, it's that the Chamber of Commerce also says give these businesses grants.
Yeah, okay.
So, maybe between having a Republican, Steve Daines, who's running for re-election, and so should probably be getting some attention from Mitch McConnell. He would like to keep Montana.
I guess.
He's one Republican from Montana, that is. So perhaps with the Chamber of Commerce and with Steve Daines behind this grant program, there will be this glimmer of hope that at least that happens.
All right. Well, we'll wait and see. We were talking about things earlier with the school reopening or the forced school reopenings, and trying to figure out whether Trump was going to try and do that to the rest of the country. And it struck me as we were reading through these things. You've been telling us all about Mitch McConnell's number one priority when it comes to COVID-19. Anyway, I mean, number one priority is judges always for everything, and keeping himself majority leader, although I think he's starting to plan for that exit too. But with respect to coronavirus, it seemed to be the liability waivers. And I was wondering, I guess maybe the only way to make something like what they're doing with the schools even remotely possible is if they say, well, we're just going to force the schools open. Well, what if people get sick?
And that is one of the things McConnell wants included in his liability waiver.
I figured it had to be, and it felt like you mentioned it.
All schools, K through 12, and colleges and universities, and healthcare providers. Yeah. He wants them all to have liability.
So that would be the answer to, well, if you're going to force us to open, what happens if we get sick? And the answer is, if you get sick, you get sick. Just the point is, they won't be able to sue you for making them sick, and that's what you're really worried about. Although, the answer could very well be, no, I was serious. I don't want people to get sick. What about that part? Oh, we can't help you with that. I don't know how to keep people from getting sick, but I can keep you out of court if they get sick.
That's his plan.
I guess so. Isn't that interesting? So first we're going to pack all the courts, and then we're going to keep all the people out of those courts. What'd you pack them for?
Good question.
That's an interesting. Well, I guess it's just belt and suspenders. If somebody manages to find a way to get you into court, then the judge will dismiss it. Or if the judge doesn't, because he's a leftover Obama guy, the appeals court judge will.
There you go.
So, I guess that's it. I also saw you were right. I guess related to the. Now that we're finding out what happened to all the PPP money and the other programs, I noticed you're piece yesterday, shock doctrine in action. Trump friends and former staff cash in on the COVID-19 crisis. I don't know if that was a major focus for you, but it certainly caught my eye. Yeah.
As many as 40 people somehow associated with Trump from the administration, from the transition, from his inaugural committee, have been lobbying for COVID-19 funds.
Okay.
For their businesses, for the guy with the laundromats, which, laundromats probably should have been declared an essential operation, because people do need to have laundry. Not everybody has it in the house, but how many millions he got out of getting them included. I can't remember which he was on the inaugural committee, I think. He's an RNC guy that raised a lot of money, right?
Brian Ballard, is that the guy?
Yeah.
Okay, so on Trump's transition team, raised more than $1 million for Trump, which I think is how you get on Trump's transition team. It wasn't like, you're on the transition team, now go raise money for our transition. It was, here's $1 million. I've got a job for you. You'll be on my transition team. So he became the lobbyist for Laundry Lux, which supplies commercial laundry machines. Laundromats were not included in the initial essential businesses, but they really should have been. That's a good point. And then guess what? They hired Trump's friend who gave him $1 million, and that's what makes him Trump's friend, by the way. It wasn't like, hi, pal, can you raise money for me? It was more like, here's $1 million. Hi, pal. But after they hired him, boom, there they are. They got the designation as essential that they needed, and he makes more money.
He makes more money. We don't know how much money he made, but he definitely made some money.
Yeah. Whatever Laundry Lux got from the federal government, the cut of that can go to Ballard without any problem. So, okay. Yeah, lots of that going on.
And this has been happening with a lot of people.
I see, you have a whole list.
Directly, in many cases, against Trump's own executive order that was going to drain the swamp.
Oh, yeah, right.
It's been just a gristmill for people to come in, spend a few months working at Treasury or HHS or somewhere else, and then go off and get the lobbying job where they are lobbying their former colleagues in those agencies.
Yeah.
Which was directly against Trump's executive order. People were not supposed to be able to, they could, if they were political appointees of Trump's, then they couldn't lobby at all during his term in office. If they were just other employees, if they weren't political appointees, but other staff, then they couldn't, they could only lobby Congress. They couldn't lobby the administration. But of course, that's not what's happened.
Yeah, well, who enforces the executive order? The executive.
Exactly.
And I don't want to, so. But you ordered it. Yeah, I did. And you took a picture of me and you ran the headline that said I ordered it.
And I scrawled my name and I sat at the little signing desk and everything. And that was the part that mattered.
Right. I got
the part in front of the cameras was the part that mattered.
Yeah. But how can you do that? You're a hypocrite. Yeah. Tell somebody who cares.
It's a big old stinky swamp.
Yeah. It's true. And
orange tinted.
Yeah. And not getting any better, that's for sure. So everybody cashing in on that. I see again, I was reading more about continuing PPE shortages. So if we ever enter, whether this spike does it or a second wave, if it ever materializes later on, I guess we're back in the same boat.
It's just going to be continuous. It's just going to be, it's a tsunami. It's a flood. It's just
and
it's not second waves.
I guess so. Just one continuous flood, but
pretty much.
Yeah. So I mean, they've kept a tight rein on the PPE. I still don't know. We forget things and leave things behind because there's a new crisis every day. I'm not clear on, did we ever stand up our own domestic PPE mask and gown and stuff production here in the United States, or did we say?
I'm pretty sure we didn't, because now we're having that crisis again.
Yeah, and I wasn't clear on whether the crisis was we weren't producing enough, or we were producing plenty, but Jared Kushner was stealing it all, or what. But
well, let's look at the AP story. Protective gear
right.
for medical workers begins to run low again. I think, we just didn't get, I don't know why we didn't get it built up again. Why we didn't, well, because the Trump administration didn't focus on getting.
Yeah. By the time we get it back up and running, it'll be over.
What was it called? The Defense Act?
The Defense Production Act.
Defense Production Act.
Yeah.
He didn't use it. He didn't get us kicked in gear to start producing these things, and so we didn't. And
oh well, so that also is bad. And I guess So whether one continuous wave or second wave or whatever, we'll be right back in the same boat. Same people, of course, will be responsible for producing the vaccines and distributing them. And I think now twice they've screwed up distribution of drugs. One that didn't work and one that might by hoarding them all.
They sent them to the wrong places. They sent them to hospitals that didn't actually have the crisis, so they didn't need it. The one that worked.
Yeah.
Remdesivir
or yeah.
Yeah. Starts with an R and ends in Veer.
Right. Revere. Just shorten it. Right. That and so that one hasn't panned out either because they haven't been able to distribute it correctly. Just every which way this thing could possibly go wrong. Plus, now all of the PP, all the PP things, right? The PPE not being produced, the PPP program, right, being stolen, the P tape still not out. All the, really just bad letter for him, generally speaking. But it's been really incredible watching the last. The whole thing, but just every day, I can't believe that they're very creative in coming up with brand new ways to make sure we never get out of this thing and to roll the dice with other people's lives with not even a whiff of accountability for people, plus an active program to prevent any accountability from being brought to bear by Mitch McConnell.
Pretty much, yeah.
No limitation to what they're willing to try if there's no consequences for any of them. And the president keeps bragging on how everyone around him has to get tested every day so that he'll be safe. I have never seen anybody build such a protective bubble around himself like that while doing everything he can to insist that no one else is entitled to any of that protection.
It's astounding. I mean, it's not as Trump.
Yeah, right.
But it's horrifying.
That's certainly true. So I don't know. The school thing has really got me alarmed today, just because everybody's going to have to send their kids back.
Well, the school thing's terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of little incubators.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, young people can get it, children can get it, and it can kill children.
Yeah. And
their parents. It's their parents now that are at least in a lot of these states where it's resurging, that are the age group that's getting it.
Yeah, right. True. The age cohort has come down. So, we'll have to deal with this thing. And just like everything else, it's just been brute force to deal with it. How will we reopen the schools safely? I don't know about safely, but I'm going to order them open. Well, then people will get sick and they'll sue everybody. Well, we're going to prevent them from suing. But what about this evidence and that evidence? None of that's true. It's all fake news. And then if something's been proven true. Why did the president say this was true when it was false? He didn't say it.
Speaking of which, hydroxychloroquine's back in the news.
Yeah. How so?
Trump's back on that kick.
Yeah, okay.
So Peter Navarro spent his morning on news shows talking about it.
Just saying it really does work.
It really does work.
Yeah, so I have been seeing it mentioned.
We're in a time warp.
I guess. I mean, it's just, I have seen people just back out there saying, no, the studies were wrong, or they did it the wrong way, or it was all a media lie. And that's all it is that people are we'll just say it. But I don't know if anybody's going to take the thing, and I don't know if there's any benefit to continuing with this. I thought they were better off just writing off their losses on that and walking away, but
I thought so too, but no, Trump's little whatever it is infested brain, my theory is syphilis.
Okay. I'll take it.
Brought it back up again.
Well,
so, wash your hands, folks. Put on your mask.
Right. Don't take the hydroxychloroquine, no matter what they say, for the time being, until somebody else tells you. Don't listen to him. And, he's supposed to speak about the school's decisions that they may or may not be making at some point in the future today. I guess Melania is going to be there. So I don't know what she's going to do.
That'll help.
Right. She'll sit there, and he'll say things. He's not going to let her speak. And I don't know if it would help if it did. And I guess we'll find out what the plan is, if there is anything beyond you all have to go to school and that's it. And we'll check in with you next week and see what the hell it was he said.
We'll try to be more optimistic next week.
Well, we always try, but there's really no reason to do it. Don't feel pressured, but I'm glad you're going to try. Do it for your own sake. Thank you, Joan. We'll catch up with you then.
Most welcome.
Take care.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, lots coming up with Justice Putnam on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next. Let's see, we've got an extremist white evangelical churches. Several of them received almost $20 million in PPP loans for being small-minded businesses. That's very cute. Justice will follow up with that next. Plus, the outrageous outbreak in Arizona.